My name is Pax Haymeyer. I'm the Director of Academic Programs here at Stanford Online, and the Stanford Center for Professional Development. I'm joined today by my colleague Jonathan Notman, who's the Senior Director of Client Success and Engagement at Stanford Online and SCPD. So today we will be telling you a little bit about the credit-bearing programs that are available through Stanford Online. We'll be going into more detail there. Before we get started, I wanted to go over a few logistics. So first of all, welcome everyone. Thanks again for joining us this morning. We know your time is really valuable and we appreciate that you're spending some of it with us to learn more about these programs. Second, as I said earlier, we do want to hear your questions and we will get to as many of them as we can. You should see a little Q&A box in your interface. Feel free to type a question in there. John and I are joined by several of our colleagues today who will answer some of those questions directly through chat, and then we will answer some of the other ones in the course of the presentation. And then at the end, we also have, and throughout, we'll stop occasionally to sort of look through the questions and address any other that we see are common. I'm going to go over a little bit of the background, a high level about Stanford Online and the Stanford Center for Professional Development. And then John will go into some more details about the credit-bearing programs and the non-degree option and the part-time and online master's degrees. And then again, we'll have some time for questions throughout. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you is just the history of the Stanford Center for Professional Development. We are actually nearing our 70th anniversary, or not SCPD per se, but our programs are nearing their 70th anniversary. Our version of started in 1954. We are part of the School of Engineering, and we started in the School of Engineering. We started when Fred Terman, who was then the Dean of Engineering, an electrical engineering professor, he established what is called the Honors Cooperative Program. And that is a part-time, then it was a part-time master's degree for working professionals to take Stanford classes while they were working. Now, of course, then it wasn't online. It wasn't even really at a distance. It was people who were in the Bay Area and really pretty much adjacent to Stanford's campus. That evolved over the years. We moved from just totally kind of being co-located with Stanford to an instructional television network that would broadcast to the Bay Area. And then it moved to a satellite network that could go outside of the Bay Area. And then in the 90s, we started moving online. And by 98, we had our first fully online degree. That was also in electrical engineering. And since then, we haven't looked back. And it's really been in the last 15 years where we moved almost fully online, right? Especially with the rise of a lot of the new learning management systems that, you're no longer mailing things into us. And that was true even 15 years ago, if maybe that's surprising. In terms of what is offered here at SCPD, so we do have a broad variety of offerings, and this is kind of a visual that shows you that range. Jonathan and I will be talking about the right-hand side of this range, but I wanted to briefly mention that we do have a lot of other learning experiences and learning resources that are available outside of the credit-bearing programs. So first of all, I'll mention our free material that's not listed here, but we have a lot of it. If you haven't already visited it, I would encourage you to go to Google the Stanford Online YouTube channel. A significant number of our course lectures and course materials are available there. And I will also say that, especially in computer science at Stanford, a lot of the course there are a lot of public-facing course websites that include syllabi, that include problem sets, that include past projects from students. So you're all here today to do some research to learn about these programs at a broad level. If you find a course that you're interested in that we offer, I would encourage you to Google that course and to see if it has a public-facing course website, to see if we have some of those lectures available on our YouTube channel, because that's a really good place where you can spend some time to learn more about what that content looks like, and that's going to answer your questions about what you're going to cover in that far better than anyone on our team could, because that's coming directly from the teaching team. So I really encourage you, as you're thinking about some of these courses, even if the course you're interested in isn't available, I'd encourage you to Google and look around at those things and see what free materials are available. It'll help you prepare, and it'll really give you a good sense of what's covered in those courses. So Let me briefly cover these red, kind of the red certificates. These are perhaps confusingly called our professional programs. And what that means is they're not credit bearing. All these programs are directed at professional learners, meaning people who are not full-time students and usually who are working while studying. So these professional programs, these are, again, not credit bearing. They're things closer to something like a MOOC, a massively online course. Often they're self-paced. We do have some cohort courses. There's a lot of variety in there in what we offer. I know many of you have mentioned that you joined us last week for our informational session on our artificial intelligence programs. We have a lot of professional programs in artificial intelligence. And so that's another opportunity that you have, again, not credit bearing, but a lot of different learning experiences. So maybe you don't have the time to do credit bearing, but you might have the time to do something that's self-paced. So there's a whole breadth of learning experiences that we offer at Stanford Online and through the Center for Professional Development. So what Jonathan and I, however, will be focusing on today is what we call the non-degree option. And these are your opportunity as a professional to take a single course at Stanford or to pursue a graduate certificate. Now, as a non-degree student, you won't be a fully matriculated student, but you will be a student at Stanford. You will have login rights. You will be attending and taking the same classes that are happening on campus, but you will only be doing it at a class at a time or pursuing a graduate certificate, which is a WASC accredited, which is an accredited graduate certificate. Finally, and we'll go into a lot more detail about these, so I'm just giving you the broad overview. Finally, the other thing we will be discussing are some of the degrees that are available to students who want to pursue it on a part-time basis and or online, and specifically master's degrees in the School of Engineering. So one thing to say at the outset, and we will repeat it, is these are the same degrees that are happening on campus. There is one application. What we support is a status within that degree, which is to be a part-time student with the option to do some of your coursework online. There are degrees that can be completed fully online, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, this is just the Stanford master's degrees. You would apply to one of the degrees that is supported through SCPD, and if you were to get in, you could petition the department to be a part-time and or online student. Okay, I see a lot of good questions coming in. And maybe one to address right away is, for those master's degrees, you are a fully matriculated student, right? You are a fully matriculated Stanford student. You have been admitted into a degree program, and so you would have the option to be part-time, but you could come in person, you could do it online. For the non-degree, those are online programs. And again, I want to use that to kind of segue into what this experience is like. So the first thing to say is what I'm going to describe as kind of our typical class, right? We support about 60 classes a quarter. And so there can be a lot of variation in these classes. A lot of the kind of details around the logistics are set by the faculty who are teaching the class, unsurprisingly, and not by us. So what I'm going to describe is the typical class experience. Again, there could be some variations. So as I mentioned before, whether you are a non-degree student pursuing credit-bearing classes or a master's student, the classes you are taking are the same classes that are happening in person on campus. And what we do is we schedule them in one of our rooms, and we staff it with course producers, and we record those lectures as they're happening in the classroom. You have the opportunity to watch those lectures after they've occurred or as a live stream. In some cases, there's two-way communication, the ability for you to ask a question, out loud during the session. In most cases, there is not, and that's because these are big lecture classes. And in most cases, the students who are taking these programs as an online student or part-time student are working, and they're not able to join a lecture live during, between 9 and 5 Pacific time, either because they're working or in their different time zone. And so these classes tend to be larger lecture classes that do not require attendance during those lecture sessions, but require to watch those lectures. Office hours are available, and they will have online office hours that will, again, to what extent of all their office hours will be online will vary a lot depending on the class, but especially in the bigger classes, a lot or all of them will have an online option. Faculty do generally try to make those available at different times to accommodate people in different time zones or working. And it'll just depend on the class, but in some cases, in the really big classes, you'll have kind of office hours available almost all day during the week, especially, So there hopefully will be one that's available to you to join online. And if there weren't, you would reach out to the teaching team or to us to see if there were a way to make it possible. The assignments that you would be doing, these would also, for the most part, be online. There's one exception, exams, and I'll get to that. But you will be doing you're responsible for all the same work that's happening on campus. It is the same class. You are earning a Stanford transcript and a grade for it. So you're doing all the same work. There will be usually discussion forums. That's where a lot of the communication happens for these classes, regardless of whether you're online or on campus. That's where you'd post questions. TAs would answer those questions. Other students will answer those questions. So those are very active discussion forums for these classes. Now, I mentioned that the assignments and most things are online. There is one exception, which is right now exams. If your class has an in-person exam, you will need to find a way to take it in person wherever you are. You don't need to come to Stanford's campus, obviously, but you will need to nominate what we call an exam monitor. So this is a person who will be responsible for receiving the exam, printing it out, and making sure that you observe the time limits and the rules around the exam, like if you can use a calculator or not use a calculator, those kinds of things. We have a lot more information you can see in the interface. There's a link to our exams FAQ, so I encourage you to go there to dig into that in more detail. But in short, an exam monitor is often your supervisor at work or an AR professional at your work, someone with a professional relationship to you, who will be in the office, at the same time as you are when you need to take those exams. Because a lot of our students these days are not going into the office or not going into the office as frequently, another way to do this is to work with a professional exam service. So a lot of universities will have that. There will just be testing centers in general are getting more and more common. Libraries often have this, again, local colleges or local community colleges in your area. So there are a lot of options there for how to handle the exam monitors. But again, that is something you have to do in person. Now, not all classes will have exams, so not all classes will require that. But if there is an in-person exam, that is something that you will need to arrange. And you'll need to think about that early on when you're sort of planning your course. Is there someone at work that'll do this, or do I need to go to a testing center? We do have, some resources to help you find those testing centers. It can be hard for us, of course, if you're abroad, and we may not always know where all the testing centers are or ones that are close to you. So, you'll probably do some searching on your own. You can also ask other students at SCPD what they're using. Finally, I'll mention, how all this is available is how you can access all these, the learning management system, the videos, the email, you will get a Stanford email and login credentials to Stanford systems during the time that you are actively enrolled in a course. And so that will allow you to, again, to log into the course, to view everything, to access the online library materials that are available at Stanford, and to use other services like the Stanford Slack, the Stanford Zoom, those kinds of things that will all be essential to sort of supporting you while you're studying here. And so it is, again, I want to repeat, these are the same classes. They're happening on campus, and you are an online student taking it alongside those on-campus students. And I like to say that is a challenge and an opportunity. It's an opportunity because we're not changing. There's in a lot of programs, it's like it's changed, it's simplified. It's like this is exactly the same class, and that's the opportunity that we're offering you, is to take and do and handle the same material that is happening here. The challenge is, of course, that there are on-campus students who can turn to the student next to them easily in the class and ask a question. These are all, for the most part, full-time students also who are in the classroom, and you are a part-time student. So there are unique challenges that you will face as an online student in a class that is, that has both online and in-person audiences. And so at that point, I want to highlight some of the things that are important to think about when you're getting prepared for these, and something to think about whether this is right for you, and if you do choose to enroll in a course, how to prepare. So the first thing to note is, these are intense classes, right? They're the actual graduate level engineering classes. So I would prepare for 15 to 25 hours of coursework per week. It's like a part-time job. There's a lot of work that's happening. You will have deadlines every week. So it's not a self-paced course. It follows a quarter system, which is 10 weeks long. If you're used to a semester, or you or a different kind of system, they move fast. The classes move fast. There's a lot of work involved. When you do start a class, I think that the most important thing is to just, as soon as you can, that first day that the course is open or the syllabus is published, take a look at it, look at the key deadlines, and get them on your calendar, right? And think about how they work with your work deadlines. So you're going to have to do that kind of special scheduling. On that note, you want to make sure that your work is aware that you're doing this, that your coworkers are aware, and that your friends and that your family. I realized I should add family here. Family is probably the most important people who should be aware that you're doing this, right? So that you have the support. They're aware that you're undertaking essentially a part-time job. And finally, I'll say there are a lot of opportunities through us to help where you can find some of that support. And these are our online orientation. So every quarter, Jonathan and I hold an online orientation. We go over some of the details we'll go over today and other logistics. And we also have quarterly social mixers. Some of those are in person and some of those are online. And that allows you to meet other students. Both the orientation and the mixers allow you to meet other students who are doing this online program. It's a really great way to meet other people who are both taking your class, but also can provide you the kind of tips and resources that you find typically just in the classroom, being able to turn next to someone. This is kind of, you can think of it, these are your opportunity to build that auditorium of people you can contact who are doing the same thing you are and can provide you those tips. So I see a lot of questions are coming in. John, should we just move on, or are there any you want to address now before we move into your section?
I think we can answer some. Rather than kind of bundle up the end. So I don't know if these have been replied to in the chat, but there's some questions that I'll quickly run through and you can take some as well. So I'm looking here and there was a question about are certificate courses self-paced? Professional certification programs are self-paced, but the programs that we're talking about right now are credit-bearing courses. Those are not self-paced. They follow an academic quarter structure. We're on an academic quarter system, not a semester system. And then there was a question about can we pass from online courses to master degree using the past courses? We'll talk about that in a minute. You can actually, if you're taking credit-bearing courses through the non-degree program and you apply to the master's degree, you have the opportunity to use some of the course credits and courses that you have previously completed if you again apply and are accepted into master's degree. There's a question here about GRE and IELTS requirements. There are some degree programs that require GRE and IELTS, some do not, it varies. The non-degree program does not require a GRE or an IELTS exams. You don't need those, but you need to research whichever degree you're interested in, and that might be applicable to the degree you're interested in. One of the other questions, let me see here. There's a question here, there are some master's degrees that offer full-time that are in large part credits. Can these be done online before applying to the full-time degree? Again, if you're interested in a degree program, a Stanford degree program, you can complete courses and course credits in the non-degree program and apply those in some cases. When you apply and are approved and matriculated into a degree program, in the first instance, we're talking about the part-time master's degree. You can start that program on a part-time basis. But if you wish to transfer to full-time, you can. You have the right to do that, and you can actually transfer from the full-time program back to the part-time program if you wish. So those are all opportunities that are available to you. It's a very flexible program. Pax, do you see any other questions?
Yeah, I'll maybe just two. So the first is just the being able to come on campus. So if you're a master student and you've been approved to do it on a part-time basis and take online coursework, you're fully matriculated. You have access to the campus. You can get if you're local, you can get a Stanford ID. You are a matriculated student. You can come in person for classes. You don't have to just take the online classes. If you are interested in the non-degree option program, and we'll go in more detail about both of these, then you are supposed to be an online student. And that means you are expected to to watch the lectures online, to do most of the coursework online. You will not have access to, for instance, to the Stanford Library, in the on-campus Stanford Library, by virtue of being a non-degree student. Now, you can go for, I think it's I forget what the numbers are now, but I think it's $100. You can buy access to the Stanford Library in person if you wanted to go in and use the library in person. There is one exception with approval, and that's for exams. Yes, if you're a local and the faculty approve, and that's the key thing. It's not, they don't always approve it because there are real capacity issues with people coming in person. So if the faculty approve it, that you can sometimes come in person to take the exams on campus. And so that would be the one exception there. But you are expected to be an online student. Now, again, if you're local and you're working on a project with matriculated students, of course, you can come and meet them, and maybe you're going to meet at a coffee shop on campus or nearby. That's normal. But you are expected to be doing, the lectures and things online. The other thing and I think, John, you mentioned this, but I didn't do a good job of sort of describing the relationship in between the non-degree and the master's program. And John will go over this in more detail. But so I don't want to jump the gun, but when you apply to you submit an application for the non-degree option that we keep on file. And every time you want to enroll in a course, you submit an enrollment request. We send the application to be reviewed by the department. They'll review that and your Stanford transcripts, and they then will approve you for the individual course. Or not approve you. It's kind of at a course level. If you take 4 of those courses, 3 or 4, depending on it, you can earn a certificate. We'll go into more detail. You do not need to declare to pursue that certificate at the outset. You could complete those 4 courses, and as long as you've completed it within a certain time frame, then you would let us know, and we would give you the certificate if you've completed the requirements for the certificate within the time frame. The master's degree then is a separate thing, right? You then apply to the master's degree if you were to be admitted, as John said, up to 18 units, and we'll cover this again, that you completed as a non-degree option could be applied towards that master's degree if the coursework is relevant. So there is a kind of a stacking that goes on there. And I just wanted to go over that. We'll go over it again. So John, with that, I'm going to hand it over to you. Sorry to jump the gun a bit.
No, it's okay. Just before we do that, there are 2 key questions I don't want to lose focus on because they are important, okay. And I want our audience today to understand. One key question, and this is very, very key for me. Question is are the courses, the credit-bearing courses that students can take online through the non-degree program in lockstep with the courses that are on Stanford campus? They are exactly the same. They are the same ones. These are not different courses. These are not courses put on by SCPD. These are the same courses that matriculated full-time students who are on campus will take. You will undertake the same study. You will undertake the same coursework, same exams. Everything is identical. You will get the same credits, etc. So that's important to not lose sight of that fact. And the other key question I think is critical as well is somebody asked about the challenge behind forming study groups. Now, I'd like to get Pax's opinion on this, but my opinion is it can be a challenge. However, with the assistance of the course teaching team and with the various kind of discussion topic based platforms that we have, it shouldn't be too difficult to form a study group. If you do find that challenging, please reach out to us or the course teaching team, and we'd be more than happy to assist that. I understand it can be a challenge based on if you're a working professional, making the commitment to the times that you've agreed on for the study groups, but it is not impossible. It just takes a little bit of organization. Pax, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It is certainly possible, and more than ever, it's possible. And so, as John said, what I would do is I would join our online orientation, right? That's done over Zoom, and we encourage all the students who join that to just put their class they're in, and if they're comfortable, where they're located. And then we will have those mixers. And then when you're in the class itself, there's usually something like a discussion forum or a Slack space. And again, that's where students will usually, I think you need to be more active on those than some of the on-campus students, because the on-campus students are turning to the people next to them. So we see students posting on those, hey, my name is Pax. I'm in the Bay Area. I'm taking CS2, I'm taking CS221. I work as none of this is true about me. I work as a programmer at X company. Would love to get together with anybody who's taking that class and form a study group. And what you'll find, we actually have some funny stories of like people who are taking these classes and find out literally the person who's, they're taking it from Washington, D.C., and the person who lives 2 blocks away is taking the same course as they are at the same time, and they form a study group. And other times, you'll find students who can find local groups doing the same things. Maybe it's a little farther away. Maybe you're in Connecticut, you got to drive into New York City for these study groups. But it is possible. It's possible to do it online. It's possible to find in-person people as well to study with. And I've heard students often form a group that they then accompany, they plan with across, their studies. If they're taking another class, maybe they enroll in it with that same student. Sorry, John, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. I just want to reemphasize what you said. This is totally possible. We have more students that are satisfied and set up with study groups than not. But we provide you with a lot of opportunities to network and mix based on the course you're enrolled in. So that shouldn't be too much of a challenge, but I understand in the past some people have brought that up to our attention. Okay, so with that being said, I'll move on to the next segment. And I want to take a few minutes to talk about the non-degree program and the part-time master's degree program that Pax has already kind of alluded to. So I want to go into a little bit of detail and explain each program. And if you have any questions, again, put them in the chat. So I'll talk about the non-degree program. Stanford Engineering specifically designed this program to provide working professionals such as yourselves or anybody that's completed their undergraduate program and really don't have any kind of in-depth experience of a graduate level program or graduate level courses. So this is the opportunity that Stanford Engineering provides for you to essentially, without committing to a long-term full-time program, try out Stanford graduate courses for credit, okay? And in some cases, we have students that are interested in just a couple of courses to get, obviously credit, the experience and the skills and education from them. And then we also have some students then who want to focus on a subset of courses in a certain area that will potentially lead to a certificate, and that's what we call a graduate certificate program. But let me just talk a little bit about applying. Okay, we get a lot of questions about applying and how it works, and a lot of concerns about how much time it takes to apply and whether they'll be accepted or not. So again, the non-degree program is non-matriculated. It is not a full-time degree program. I consider this to be a part-time non-degree program. Okay, so that's the first definition that we need to provide. You can apply for the non-degree program any academic quarter. You can apply during autumn, winter, spring, or summer. With the degree program, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, that's different. There are only certain times a year you can apply. So you can actually start the non-degree program anytime you wish. It's a simple application, okay? It's through our My Stanford Connection portal that is, created by SCPD specifically, and it is not the same application as a master's degree. It is quite simple, quite easy, doesn't take too long to complete. That application will require you to complete segments, for example, a statement of purpose, provide transcripts, and all the documentation that we will need to see if you meet the standard academically for the courses or program that you're applying for. It's flexible. You do not need to enroll every quarter. Like the master's degree program does require continuous study. This does not. You can take a course, take a quarter off. You can take 2 courses, take a year off. That's entirely your choice. It's totally flexible. There's no commitment from you to enroll every quarter. I just want to say that. And that's what I'm mentioning is non-continuous enrollment. It's not flexible in that this is self-paced. As I mentioned earlier on, you must, if you're enrolling in credit-bearing courses through the non-degree program, you must follow the academic quarter structure. It's typically 10 weeks long. Some are slightly different. It's a little quicker than 10 weeks. It's like between 8 and 9 weeks. But having said that, it's flexible in terms of you can enroll whatever you wish to suit your kind of circumstance, whether you're working or whatever. One thing I do want to point out is this is non-negotiable. For the non-degree program, you must have an undergraduate degree. We do not accept applications without an undergraduate degree. If in some cases, and I know I'm British, right? I'm European. Back in the day, there was the opportunity for students, what we call to be mature students, and not undertake an undergraduate degree and go straight into a master's degree or baccalaureate or whatever. That's fine. That obviously counts. But if you don't have formal education like a bachelor's of science degree or anything like that, then the application won't be accepted. We have to have that standard in place. I want to talk a little bit about the graduate certificates that we offer. Now, these are different from taking single courses for credit. These are a subset of courses that you can take in a certain discipline that will then count towards a credential, a certificate. These are accredited programs, okay, but they aren't still in the category of non-degree. As you take courses through a graduate certificate program, there are typically required courses and some electives, depending on which one you select. And you must maintain a B or better. You must maintain an academic standard to continue through the program and complete. So you are required to get a B or better in all of the courses that you take within a graduate certificate. That's a must. For the graduate certificate, you have up to 3 years to complete. So if you're thinking, depending on which graduate certificate you opt for, it can be 3 or 4 courses typically. You should be able to complete that within 3 years. Again, you can pause, take breaks. We understand things happen with work and life, but 3 years is a pretty sufficient amount of time to complete it. And as we mentioned earlier on, this applies to both the graduate certificate and taking individual courses for credit. If you apply and are accepted into a Stanford Engineering Master's program, you have the opportunity to apply up to 18 units of credit to the master's degree if you are admitted, okay? The master's degree, which I'll talk about in a second, is typically 45 units, so you're kind of almost halfway there, depending on what courses you've taken and what courses and credits that the academic department will allow you to apply to your degree. Okay, so moving on, I want to talk a little bit about the Honors Cooperative Program, which is the acronym there, HCP, which is a part-time master's degree. I'll talk a little bit first about the application process. Now, this is different to non-degree. It's the same application as the full-time degree program. It is an extensive application. It is not quick. It's not simple. There's a lot of requirements that you have to meet. So the application for the part-time master's degree is the same as the full-time degree. It's at the point where if you're admitted to the program, you're accepted into the program, that at that point you can elect, I want to take this in a part-time capacity. Oh, no, I want to take this in a full-time capacity. So that's the difference. We get a lot of confusion about whether the Honors Cooperative Program part-time master's degree application is the same or not as the full-time degree. It is the same. The application will be reviewed through the academic department that you're applying to. So, for example, if you're interested in a Stanford Computer Science master's degree, you will be applying through that specific department, and they will review that application. Again, if you meet the requirements of the program and they're happy with your application, they're the ones that will be reviewing and approving that. If you are interested in a specific master's degree program, we would always encourage, we can provide you with information, we can help you kind of get the basics of understanding the programs and how they work. But the academic departments themselves have a lot of information and a lot of detail and a lot of information about deadlines and how to apply and when to apply on their department website. That's the place you should really go to get a lot of extensive information. We can provide you with those, those links. We can send you that information, but that's like where you really want to start in terms of getting that, profound amount of information so you can understand exactly the program that you're applying to and hopefully will be admitted to. I want to talk a little bit about the degree program itself. You will be considered a fully matriculated student. You have the rights and privileges of a full-time student. You are no different, okay? And again, I want to emphasize you are a fully matriculated student. The difference is you would be considered, if you apply and elect part-time, you would be a part-time student where you can attend classes, lectures, information sessions, office hours in person or online. That's your choice. So it's kind of like hybrid, right? So you can come to campus if you wish, or if you want to be remote, that's totally fine as well. If you want to kind of mix it up and do remote one quarter and in person the next quarter, you can do that. That's your right to do that, okay? But you do have the ability to study in person or online. That's entirely your choice. One thing I want to make mention about, and I'm sure a lot of you will have questions about this, is that not all of the master's degree programs can be done remotely. We do have some that can be done remotely, but by the nature of the program, they cannot, okay? The courses are just not offered online, or some courses can't be really completed and engaged online. So there's a lot of reasons for that, okay? But, and again, we can provide you with information on what degrees can be completed remotely and which cannot. And again, that department will have that information on their degree program website. And I just want to make mention as well, in all degrees, only some concentrations are available online. So for example, if I take computer science, they have concentrations of specializations that can be completed fully online, some partially online, and some that just can't be completed online. So you have to kind of understand which specialization or concentration that you're interested in, and then understanding whether you would be required to come to campus for some of that degree or not, depending on what you select. So that's kind of talking a little bit about the degree program. And I guess we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit again, just to kind of summarize what I've said about the non-degree program. You can apply anytime. You have to, for a non-degree program, submit official university transcripts. That's a requirement. If you're, interested in electrical engineering courses or, management science and engineering courses, they come with a prerequisite. They want to see your academic background, and they want to make sure that you have the ability and the requirements to complete that course successfully. The last thing we want to do is have you admitted to a course for credit, and then you kind of suddenly realize, oh gosh, I didn't realize I needed linear algebra or whatever the academic requirement is. So you will need to submit official university transcripts. You can do that directly through our portal. You don't need to mail them in. You don't need to email them in. You can upload them as part of your application, which is great. You will need to submit official identification. That is a federal requirement. We are required to take your identification, which can be driver's license, passport, whatever it might be, whatever type of official ID that you have, you need to submit that with your application. As I mentioned earlier on, there is a section in the non-degree program application where you're going to have to write a brief statement of purpose. That's kind of just a section where you have to kind of provide information about what course or program you're interested in, and why you feel it will be beneficial for you to undertake that course or program. So you can write that, and you can refine that at any point in time. If you take a couple of courses and want to refine it based on you change your focus, then you could do that. When you enroll, so that's the application process. When you submit your application, that would then be reviewed by the academic department to which course you are applying for, whether it's computer science, electrical engineering, or whatever. They will review that application formally. But again, I do want to mention it's not as extensive as a degree program application. It is quite different. So to enroll in courses, you must meet the course and department prerequisite requirements. That's, again, a non-negotiable. If you're required to have linear algebra or Python in place, they want to see that. They want to see that you completed a course with a grade or for credit to show that you have the ability to meet the requirements to enter the course. Again, just want to mention you can enroll in any quarter of courses offered. We try to offer as many courses as we can during each of the academic quarters. Winter, autumn, and spring, we do offer an extensive schedule of courses. Summer, not so much. It's a little bit less. But again, there are some key courses that you can take during the summer months. You must, as I mentioned earlier on, earn a B or better to keep taking courses. Particularly for the graduate certificate, it's important that you get a B or better to continue through and complete the program. If you just want to take single individual courses for credit, which is not via a graduate certificate program, you do have to, again, keep a standard of a B or better. If you get less than a B, you will need to petition to continue. That's not to say you can't continue, but the academic department will want to kind of understand, why the grade wasn't as great as it was, what should have been, and what you can do to continue going forward. As I mentioned earlier on, you can skip quarters. You do not need to be continually enrolled. And in some cases, students will skip quarters, again, based on work requirements, or maybe the course that they need to take is not offered that particular quarter, or whatever it might be. For the graduate certificate, as I mentioned earlier on, you will take anywhere between 3 to 4 courses to earn a graduate certificate in that concentration area. We get a lot of questions about, well, I've completed the requirements of the certificate, a completed the 4 courses, but I want to take the others. Yeah, it's totally fine. You don't have to stop after 3 or 4 courses. You want to continue and take the rest of the courses in the graduate certificate, you're totally okay to do that. As I mentioned earlier on, up to 3 years to complete the graduate certificate, and you will earn a Stanford transcript. You will get an official Stanford University transcript, which lists the courses you completed, when you completed them, the grade, and the number of credits, as well as, most importantly, your GPA. You will have your Stanford GPA on that transcript, and you have the opportunity to request that through our access system. And again, if you complete the courses and get a B or better or above in any of the courses, then you will get an accredited non-degree graduate certificate from Stanford University. That will be provided to you on completion of the program. Okay, so I think that's about it, aside from just some information about the tuition for academic year 23-24. I'm thinking about last year, sorry about that. The current tuition fee is $1,456 per academic credit. So a typical 4-unit course will cost $5,824. Graduate certificate, again, depending on which one you choose and depending on which courses you take, typically can be completed anything as low as 12 units to 16 units or more. And the typical cost is, as you can see there, $70,000 to $23,000, depending on which graduate certificate you take and which courses you take. Okay, just one last thing before I hand it back to Pax. Enrollment for spring quarter is currently open. That will close on March 17th of this year. So if you are interested in a spring quarter course, you would need to submit your application and enroll by that deadline. Summer enrollment, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we do offer courses during the summer. That will open on April 8th. So that's just a few weeks away. That being said, now I'll hand it back to Pax for the rest of the presentation. Thanks, Pax.
Thanks, John. So I saw a few good questions that came in. So mostly about application for the 2 different programs. So let me briefly say a few things about the master's degrees. So as John mentioned, these applications, you're applying to the same degree. And so I would I would search for the department is going to have a lot of information about those degree programs. And that is where I would go to look up, what's required for it, what tests are required, what recommendations, et cetera. They will have all that information. That will be set at the department level. If you're thinking about, hey, I want to do a non-degree option, but I want to take courses that might count towards the master's degree. Again, most of the master's degrees will have their program requirement. They will all have their program requirements publicly available. So you should be able to find computer science master's degree, requirements. It can take a little clicking around on the internet. I know, even I who've done it, many times, sometimes forget exactly how to get there, but you should be able to find it, and they will list, all the courses that are required. Some people asked about kind of a clear matrix that shows what we offer and how it lines up to the master's degrees. We generally don't do that, partly because the degrees change, right? And that's not, so we want to make sure we don't want to provide outdated information. So I'd really check with those degrees. As John mentioned, and it's worth reiterating, if you were to be admitted into a master's degree and you were interested in pursuing it online, not every course that's offered at Stanford will be available to you online, right? And so even within a master's degree, if you're interested in doing it fully online, not every depth area will be available to you, right? So then some of that information we can provide, or they'll be provided by the department. So you'll be choosing from a subset of classes. A lot of students therefore choose to do some of it online, then they can transfer to full-time and they finish it in person, right? So you can really think of that the HCP program is providing a lot of flexibility for you and how you pursue and complete that degree. So you'll have students who maybe are working working somewhere and don't want to, they want to do some of the degree first before they come in person. And so they'll do some of it, maybe 2 years online and then come and kind of finish it off in a year or a quarter. So I would, again, go back to the department information, the departments to find out that information. I did see a question about HCP and whether it requires company sponsorship. That's a great question. It does not anymore. It did used to require that. It is not a requirement anymore. So any, those programs and the non-degree are open to, you have to be admitted, but anyone can apply, right? Anyone is eligible to apply. Now, if your company is reimbursing you, that's something that you would want to sort of work with your company and internally. That's not a question that we can answer. So, John, did you want to add something? I was going to.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to run through, give you a breather for a second and run through some questions that I can see right now. We'll tag team on this. So yeah, great question again. Some really excellent questions. Thank you, everybody. This is just great. And this is important for you, to get the information you need if you are interested in any of these programs. One of the questions is, do you need a recommendation letter to apply for a graduate certificate? No, nope, you don't. It's just simply a application with a statement of purpose, transcripts, any other required documentation depending on your circumstances. But no, you don't need a GRE or a letter of recommendation academically. You don't. That's for the master's degree. Again, another question: does individual courses require recommendation letters? Nope, nope. You don't need them. Just your academic transcripts, so we can see if you have the requisite academic background for the program. And there's questions about, I see, scholarship financial assistance. There are opportunities based on whether you're domestic or international. There are opportunities for financial assistance and scholarships. They are not available for the non-degree program or the graduate certificate because those are considered to be short-term part-time programs, and definitely the requirement, they're non-matriculated. So that's another key factor. If you are interested in the master's degree program, again, whether it's part-time or full-time, you can, there's information on the stanford.edu website on how to apply, what scholarships are available, what financial assistance is available, and how you can apply and who would be applicable to receive financial aid or a scholarship. So that was a key question that I thought was interesting. And there was another... Yeah, there was, again, a question. If in future I want to pursue a master's, can I use these credits for master's? Yes. If you take courses for credit through the non-degree program and you're interested in a master's degree, apply and accepted, then you can apply the credits and courses to that degree. It has to be the same degree. You can't undertake courses in statistics and then suddenly think about applying those to, computer science. It wouldn't work like that. It has to be kind of almost like for like or qualifying. So there was a question about, let me see, where can we enroll in master's degree programs? That would be through the graduate admissions website. Again, if you go to www.stanford.edu and search for graduate admissions, the application portal to apply is there. Again, as Pax mentioned, if you go to the academic department master's degree page, they will have a link there to the application for a master's degree. So that's how you get to that. I think you handled the one about company sponsorship. Then, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for now, Pax, unless you can see any others.
I saw just one that came up earlier in terms of the non-degree option program. We got questions about, you've been out of school for a while. Is there an age restriction? The non-degree option program is open to anyone who meets the requisites for the courses, right? Another thing, we said you need a BS or a Bachelor's of Science. You can have a BA, a Bachelor's of Arts, as long as you're meeting the prerequisites for the course, right? As long as you can establish that you've done that, you meet the other department level prerequisites that are required to take that course. And they'll review the full application. So I don't want to say it just comes down to sort of your transcript. They'll review the full application. And so it really is, we have a lot of students who like to do the non-degree option. And just to give you, a lot of them are students who are interested in a master's degree, as John sort of laid out. And they say, hey, is grad school right for me? I'm going to take this one, online course, see if I'm really ready for it, if it's something I want to do. And they take one or two courses, and then they apply to maybe a master's degree at Stanford or somewhere else. And if they get it at Stanford, then great, they've already made progress towards it. So that's one common profile, the students who's kind of testing out master's degree. But we have students who already have master's degrees or have PhDs, and they're like, I really don't want to get a degree again. Maybe they want a certificate, or maybe you just want a single course, right? So, especially 5-6 years ago, we had a lot of people who had PhDs, even in computer science, and they said, look, all this machine learning, the reinforcement learning, this stuff wasn't offered 15 years ago when I was pursuing my master's degree. I want to fill that gap now. I don't need a degree. I don't even need a certificate. I just want to take these 1 or 2 courses to fill in that background because it's important for me. So that's another very common sort of profile. Or we also have people who, maybe they don't need it for professional reasons, but they're just lifelong learners, and they are ready to dedicate the time that it takes to take a highly technical class, and they take a class here and there. We do have some students who have been taking classes as professionals for like 20 years, right? When they can, they take a class, right? And they're not interested certificate, they're just interested. They do well, they continue to do well, and when they have time, they take those classes. And so
there's a couple of good questions, if I may. So really good question about if a student were to complete courses through the non-degree program, which are applicable to a master's degree. Now, the best way I can really describe that is if you are interested in a master's degree, again, let's say computer science as an example, you can go onto their department website and you can see which courses will count towards each concentration area. So for example, if you're interested in an artificial intelligence specialization, degree specialization, and you see, for example, machine learning is a part of that concentration area. If you complete that through the non-degree program, that's one that you can apply. So you really have to kind of take a look at what courses are required to complete the concentration area you're interested in, and then match that against the courses that are offered through for credit through SCPD. So that's the best way to do that. So there's what we call course sheets, and you can take a look at those via the academic department website. One other question is important to distinguish. Somebody asked a question: if I complete the master's degree in a part-time capacity, is the diploma, is the certificate I receive different from a full-time student? Not entirely different. The only thing that it will specify is that you were part of the honors cooperative program, but essentially the rest is the same. It's just the program title. That's the difference. One other question I saw that was interesting as well was, let me just see, let me just pop back. No, I think we've actually answered that one already about applying credits across. Oh, yeah, there's one question about doctorate programs. We don't manage or support the doctorate program through the School of Engineering. We don't. And there was a question about whether we offer medical programs, degree programs or doctorate programs in medicine. We don't. That's not our area. We are School of Engineering, Stanford School of Engineering.
John, I just want to jump in. Neither John nor I. So we get a lot of questions of how competitive are the master's degrees. They are very competitive at Stanford, in particular the master's degree in computer science. I don't have acceptance rates. I don't even know if Stanford publishes those, but they're very competitive. They're very competitive degrees. So they're hard to get into. Is the NDO, another comment, is the NDO a kind of a backdoor into it? It is not, right? I mean, they have so many. I've heard, stories where they're like, we had so many applicants, we could just like accept every applicant from this one school and just the one's other school, so they have so many applications that are coming in. It's very competitive. The non-degree option does give you an opportunity, to get a Stanford transcript to show that you can perform well in the classes. Certainly departments will look at your Stanford transcript when you apply, if you have taken non-degree option courses. But again, it's competitive. That's the nature, and we don't, so I don't have numbers, unfortunately, on the specific programs, and it will vary by the different programs.
One question here we get a lot is there's a question about can Stanford Engineering accept completed courses from, whether it's, online platforms like edX, Coursera, or other, no, they will not accept the transference of courses or course credits from external institutions. You have to complete them either through the non-degree program or the degree program. So you can't apply courses you complete via edX or Coursera or anything like that to to the graduate certificate or the master's degree program. Is there a limit of students that are accepted to the non-degree program? No. Having said that, there are some courses that are very popular, that are capped by the department. We don't have too many of those, but because they are super popular, there's no way that we can accept 5,000 enrollments because the course teaching team couldn't handle that number of students. So, but generally, yeah, there's not really a limit for the program itself, and there's only a handful of courses that are capped at an enrollment rate.
We're nearing the end of time. Maybe one other question that I'll answer. I see we get a couple of these is, although we are in the School of Engineering, we do have a few non-degree courses as well as certificates with the School of Medicine. So we have an epidemiology certificate as well as a biomedical data science. So I saw a couple people asking about medicine, programs in medicine. So those two programs, we also, you can take as a non-degree student. John, I think we've addressed most of the questions. I'm sure we've missed a few, so we really appreciate your time. Yeah. We have a lot of information on our website. As some of you asked about the AI informational session, we have that you can find that on our website as well, I believe. And you can also probably just search for it, and we'll have it up on our YouTube channel as well. So if you're interested in watching that or this one, if you missed anything. So thank you again for your time. We really appreciate you joining us today. And we will be having more of these sessions in the future. So, if you have questions in the future, you can join us again. Thanks so much.